This might be the most difficult book I have chosen to review, and maybe the book that will be most misunderstood of any book this year. And I'm going to lay the blame for the misunderstanding right at the feet of Dr. Tony Evans. Kingdom Race Theology attempts to do what I believe is impossible. But at the same time, I appreciate Dr. Evans' attempt at trying to do the impossible. And I hope that some people will read this book with open eyes and without predetermined judgment because it is written by an established African-American pastor. And at the end of this book, shift their views on racism and on justice in line with biblical teaching. Dr. Evans' goal is to bring unity and clarity between the Black Lives Matter activists and the All Lives Matter activists, to provide an understanding between social justice warriors and biblical justice proponents, that Christians from both sides of the divide who claim they want a church which is united, where brown and white brothers and sisters in Christ will worship the Lord together and serve him in harmony. And on that goal, the attempt to bring the social justice woke crowd together with the conservative crowd of the church, I think in that goal this book will fail. And I think in his attempt to bring unity to these opposing groups, he's going to be shouted down and alienated by both groups. In Kingdom Race Theology, Evans begins by looking at the problems facing us in America today as regards to race. He looks at the history of racism in America. He speaks of his own experience with racists in his past and his struggles against them and his issues with the systems that are set up in America, which have historically oppressed and disadvantaged Black Americans from the worst days of slavery up until this present day. When it comes to the first section of this book, I believe the Black Lives Matter supporters, the woke crowd, will nod their head in agreement at what Evans says, outside of when he formally denounces the Black Lives Matter organization. He says some things in this early part of the book that I wholeheartedly disagree with, but I believe SJWs will love what he writes. Of course, we are all aware of the evil system of slavery, a legal system enacted to oppress Black people based on the color of their skin. Sorry, Dr. Evans, but slavery wasn't enacted to oppress Black people, and frankly, I'm shocked that that sentence made it into the book because it's obvious that slavery predates any issues that we have in America today between Black and white individuals. No one enacted slavery for the purpose of oppressing Black individuals due to the color of their skin. We don't know for sure when slavery began, but it did not start out of an effort to oppress Black people. And I think moments like that in the beginning of the book could lead a lot of people to entirely dismiss Kingdom Race Theology. And it will result in some harsh negative reviews about how Tony Evans has gone woke and is now a firm supporter of anti-racist views that are spouted by men like Ibram X. Kendi and Jemar Tisby. But at page, I think it's about 33 in the book, from that point until the end of the book, in page 105, the narrative flips. If you were frustrated by the first 30 so pages of the book, you're going to love the final 70. And if you loved the first 30 pages of the book, you're going to hate the final 70. And I think that will end up frustrating most readers of Kingdom Race Theology. Because once Dr. Evans does begin to talk about the solutions to this racial divide in America, he is as unwoke as Vodi Bakum. He is as conservative as Larry Elder. Here are a few of the examples of what Dr. Evans suggests to getting past our racial divide. On politics, he writes, any policy that seeks to strip individual responsibility, ambition, and values from people, or dismantle the primacy of the nuclear family, does more harm than good. On public education, he writes, The refusal to offer parents school choice greatly disadvantages the opportunity and progress for the disenfranchised, locking them into an inefficient educational monopoly that underserves them. He's advocating school choice. That's not really a view that would be tolerated at all from those who would oppose Dr. Evans' views. On the Marxist worldview of the oppressor-oppressed conflict struggle that is really the underlying philosophy of critical race theory, on that issue he says, God's approach to racial reconciliation dismantles the oppressor-oppressed distinction in light of the supremacy of Jesus Christ. I would love to have another quote on this one section that Dr. Evans has, but there was no real small way to put it into a quote. But Evans writes how one of the major systems that are holding down the urban black community in America is brought about by basically the war on poverty, the free government handouts that strip individuals of needed individual responsibility that must come to a person in order for them to thrive. And then Dr. Evans provides the following advice to black Christians. Fatherlessness and the demise of the nuclear family is the greatest crisis we face as a people. I've communicated that same view to others, only to be called racist for holding it. He also writes, take time to evaluate the motivation, knowledge, and intent of a person and deed. Ask questions and seek clarification before making a final judgment. And this advice, Dr. Evans is just saying, before you assume that that white person who said something negative against you was acting in racism, talk to them. Ask questions. Figure out if they really can't stand your skin color or if it was just an honest mistake. I think if we had those type of discussions, it would probably eliminate anywhere from 50 to 90% of the racist interactions in America today. And then his advice to white Christians is, reject white guilt if you have not committed racial sins. Support and partner with opportunities for responsible, non-paternalistic black progress, especially for the poor. All of these points that he is making, every single one of them, from my opinion, runs afoul of the modern social justice, wokeness, and the Black Lives Matter movement. But they are wonderfully in line with what I would term as biblical justice. Now, I think there is an abundance of sage advice that is packed into this short little 100-page book. I think if we could put this book into practice, it could change our nation in a profound way. But what I'm nervous about is that Dr. Evans' Kingdom Race Theology is going to get buried under a mountain of other books on racism in America and the church, and also that this book will get attacked from both sides of the aisle that he is trying to bring peace to, but they don't want peace. They want to remain at war. I really hope that people read Kingdom Race Theology. I think it could be immensely beneficial for a lot of people in the American church. But the thing is, you got to come into it not painting Dr. Evans into a view that you already have him as. You got to come into this book allowing him to speak for himself from beginning to end. Don't allow my opinion to dissuade you from reading this book. Read it for yourself. It's not very long. You can read this one. And I just don't know if I can say it strong enough. I really want people to read this book because Dr. Evans has such a wisdom and a wealth of experience to draw from that we would be foolish to discount him without a full reading of his book. Now, I thought there was a good chance going into Kingdom Race Theology that I was going to despise this book. That I was going to read it and go, oh no, we've lost Dr. Tony Evans. And while I don't agree with every line and every point, there is so much wisdom to glean from this book. There is so much insight for every person to gain from someone like Dr. Tony Evans. If you've enjoyed this review and you want to stay connected to the at times controversial world of Christian literature, I'd encourage you to subscribe to the Rev Reads YouTube channel.